Hi folks, I'm Rob Hayes and welcome back to my series on art direction. In this episode, I'll be creating 3 new concepts. At the end of this episode, once all the concepts are complete, I'd love to get your feedback on what designs I should progress with the intention of creating revisions for 3 of the concepts. I will also be adding my own feedback, where I will compare how well each design will translate into gameplay and how well it fits in with the design brief. As you can see, I'm working on concept number 4. For this design, I wanted to have archways running across a background. This design is going to be similar to concept number 2, in that I'm using an alternating brick pattern and some similar colours. I'm only drawing half of this section, as I'll flip it over. This allows me to both design quicker and with more detail. With the archway mostly complete, I can copy and paste the design on other levels of the concept. At this point, I noticed that the archway stood up too much of a foreground element, so I'm going to copy all of it and make it a bit lighter, so I can push it further into the background. Once the background colour was added, I noticed that the elements didn't quite match, so it was time to change the colours again. As well as having a similar edge, I've got the same style of background on this concept as concept number 2. Though I've borrowed elements, I still think it's unique enough to stand on its own. At this point, I'm still noticing the concept to be a little bit more washed out than I'd like, so I'm going to add a darker edge around some of the assets to help them pop. With this change, I'm noticing that the archway is blending in with the edge walls a little bit more, so I'm going to try an even darker, close to black edge around the edge wall. This will also help to stylise it a little bit, a look that I quite like. With this change, I'm finding the concept standing on its own 2 feet a lot more. With a new focus and a bold and blocky style, I'm able to create the new platforms. I've chosen a more yellow colour, as I believe this will help it stand out from the other game elements. Though it's a slightly different direction to what I've usually gone for, I quite like that the platforms don't necessarily match with the level of detail of the background elements. So rather than taking inspiration from the real world, this is much more game heavy. The concept seems to be fitting together a lot better now, especially with some additional shading. Sometimes it's nice to not necessarily have a plan when you start concepting and to just see where it goes. But to quote Bob Ross, it can create happy little accidents. And speaking of mistakes, I originally tried a tablet sort of design or relic as a pickup, but this didn't seem to work, so I went with a classic coin. Though it's not perfect, it'll definitely do for now. Finding the right danger element for this concept was a little bit harder. My original idea was to have lava, but it might seem like there was too much orange within the concept, especially considering some elements were still muddying. To combat this, I went for a darker blue water. For my 5th concept, I wanted to try something quite drastically different, so I went with a underwater, bottom of the ocean kind of feel. I'll later add barn pools and seaweed and hangers. I also wanted to drastically change the rendering technique. Though I'm not exploring style and only shapes with this, it is nice to sometimes try something different, because you never know where it will go. To add shading to this concept, I've used a scatter paintbrush. This is a technique that I haven't used all that often, but it is quite nice for the effect. It's a nice mix between flat design and something a little bit more illustrated. Keeping the natural look that I've created with this concept so far, I'm also making a cracked style background that would work within an underwater cabin. Wanting to be reminiscent of a flat style, I'm trying to also limit my colours. It's not always a good idea to stick to an existing style, though some designs do work very well for them and adaptations can be made. At this point it can be hard to come up with new designs, so sticking to a style and limiting yourself can also create something new. At this point I'm finding the design could still be just a cave, so I'm adding some glow effects from waves and ripples that would be found in the water underneath. Now taking up the marquee tool, in a similar manner to how I created the edge walls, I'm going to create the platforms. I'm not keeping too much in mind with how they're going to look, I just want to get some random shapes down, and that way I can chip them away and refine until I have platforms. Though I do very much like the looks of the irregular walls and platforms that I've created, I am slightly concerned that when I bring a design like this into game, I will have issues with collision. But this can be iterated upon at a later date. With the design brief in mind, I know that this still has to look a bit more like a dungeon or tower, so I'm going to break up the platforms that I've made and make them look more like brickwork. To try and add another colour to the scene, I've tried a edge that's made of brass, similar to concept number 1, but in the end I didn't feel this worked. Looking back at the design, I can also see to address this issue, I could have changed the water from a blue like I have it, something a bit more turquoise. Might end up being a mistake, but if you have an idea, it's always worth trying, especially when you have layers to work with. As I suggested at the start of this concept, I'm now adding barnacles and seaweed. This will also help to add some more colour variation to the concept, which, as I mentioned before, was a concern of mine. Though it's a personal style choice, I'm always a fan of adding as many colours as I can to a concept, within reason of course. Happy with how the concept's progressing, particularly in the style, I can now add a pickup for the level. So for this, keeping with the underwater theme, I felt like an anchor was perfect. I have given this concept a bit more time and details, so I do have to make sure that my bias doesn't come through with this design when choosing what design I progress with, because each and any of the concepts can have this much time dedicated to them. For my sixth and final concept, I'm going to go with a hell-like theme. So I'm going to be using lava, I'm going to be using oranges, I'm going to be using spiky bits. Addressing my concerns on collision, I want to make sure that these platforms work better, so I'm using more man-made structures. I wanted to try metal spikes for this design. After trying it though, I went for bones So although the metal spikes would have added another colour element, the bones just fit far more thematically with the hell theme that I had going. I would love it if you folks could be almost like the client throughout this series, in that you can give me feedback on changes, additions, subtractions, combinations that I can make through these concepts until we bring them into a mock-up and then the final assets. Though it doesn't seem natural, I've gone for quite a blocky background, so large bricks. This is like the fourth concept where it's a bit more gamey than necessarily realistic, but it's a style that I quite like, and it's always good to explore these things. As you would imagine, I had to go for lava with this concept, being hell and all that. However, to mix it up, taking reference in concept number 5, I decided to add some glow from the lava that was reflecting onto the platforms and sidewalls. This could be achieved in-game easily with a second tile set overlapping. Adding some final shading, this just about completes all 6 concepts. But, of course, none of these concepts would be complete without a pickup. Sticking with an idea found from concept number 1, I've decided to add a key, but in this case, it's a skeleton key. So, as I mentioned before, I'd love to get feedback from you folks. With this in mind, I'm going to put a slight pause on when I bring out the next episode to give you all a chance to let me know what you think. As for my own critique, though the underwater design is probably one of my favourites, this is probably coming because I've spent the most time on it, and it has one of the more unique styles. I have to remember that any of these styles can be applied to each of the concepts. With this in mind, I must say that concept 1, 5 and 6 are my favourite. This is mostly because their theming is spot on, and their platforms look generally fun to jump around. I can also imagine having some great characters that would want to escape from the prisons of this dungeon. I really appreciate you sticking to the end of this video, and I hope to have another episode out soon. So if you can let me know what you think of the designs, and if there's anything you'd like to see in particular with these videos, please do let me know. Remember to like and subscribe so we can keep up to date whenever I launch anything new.